Good evening. Happy New Year to everyone. The appointed time has arrived. It's 7 p.m. We're here to open the January 3, 2024 meeting of the Mashpee Planning Board at Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North, Mashpee, Mass. Welcome everyone tonight. We're being broadcast live on local channel 8 and streamed live on the Town of Mashpee website at www.mashpee.gov/channel-8 *. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Does anyone have any changes or edits to the minutes of the last meeting, December 20th, 2023? Do we want to take a few minutes to take a look at it?
I had one question, and
Yeah.
it might require a review of the video. Relative to the motion made to approve the Aquay Highlands special permit modification conditionally upon the submission of an as-built with certain requirements, I'm not certain the list of as-built requirements that Mary had enumerated in her motion are totally captured, and I might be wrong. But I also noted in the draft decision that I omitted that as a condition, so I'd like to ensure that the motion is totally accurate in consideration of what the required.
Okay, so are you saying you don't want to put it in today?
Well, if the board could review that particular motion.
Okay, where are we?
Because I feel like Ed had also asked for the lotting and a few other things in addition to what were shown in that motion.
Okay, what page? Direct us to
4.
that.
And I just reviewed these minutes before being seated, so I have not reviewed the video.
So you're looking at, right at the bottom there, Ms. Wagon made a motion to require applicant provide an as-built plan to the best of ability showing property bounds, edge of pavement, mailboxes, drainage holes, telephone, and catch basins.
So my question is, does that feel complete to you? I don't recall.
It feels like there is something missing.
Yeah, let's just hold off on approving the minutes.
All right, and I will
Hold off till when?
till the next meeting when I can confirm.
Okay.
Well, I
for them.
think they're all in the decision. The decision's being drafted.
So the
It's
decision.
in your draft.
I did not include that as a condition.
Oh, you did not include any of them?
Accidentally.
Oh,
So I want to
okay.
make sure that
Sure.
the minutes are accurately reflected and the decision considers them in totality.
If you'd like, I can go back and review and then correct it.
That would be great, Chrissy. If-
Okay, so we don't need a motion now, we'll just continue it to next time and finalize it then. Okay, we have public comment. I will read Glenn McCarthy's letter. The members of the planning board got a copy, but this is for people in the audience and at home. This is about raise and replace. To Mashpee Planning Board Chair, members, Town Planner, from Glenn McCarthy. I would like to provide the following public comment regarding the draft raise and replace bylaw. Purpose and intent. Consider adding a statement regarding water such as, quote, "to facilitate the adequate provision of drainage and sewerage and to protect, preserve, and maintain the existing surface and groundwater and their drainage or recharge areas," end quote. General requirement. Consider changing the following sentence to forbid the extension of existing nonconformities as the current language rewards noncompliance. Should say, no, quote, "no new nonconformities," underline, "nor extensions of existing nonconformities shall be permitted without the issuance of a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals." For all properties, now this is the first group that we're talking about, for all properties except those in the floodplain zone and Pompanesett Overlay District. This section appears to keep the current raise and replace bylaw for much of Mashpee, including the pond neighborhoods. Consider striking this entire section and having the stricter standard for the entire town. It does not seem fair, especially to the pond neighborhoods, that only parts of town get protected. Subsection A, if this section is kept, consider more clearly defining, quote, to increase the intensity of a setback. Now then, the second group is for all properties within the floodplain zone and Pompanesett Overlay District. Consider simply forbidding the continuing, extending, or altering pre-existing nonconformities when rebuilding. This had been the standard bylaw in Mashpee for decades until it was changed to enable greater ultra-luxury development. A, if expansions of nonconformities will be allowed, this is in the floodplain or in Pompanesett Overlay, if expansions of nonconformities will be allowed, then consider more clearly defining increases in the size of the building footprint, quote unquote. In summary, please consider language where a complete rebuild triggers coming into compliance or at least calls for moving in the right direction. Let's move away from the, quote, if you are bad, it's okay to get worse standard. In order to protect our neighborhoods and waters, we need to return to the understanding that an undersized lot with no sewer connection has a physical water discharge limit, and that small lots on narrow streets with no modern infrastructure have limited carrying capacities. Thank you for your consideration, Glenn McCarthy. I have another one. It's not technically for public notice, but it's something that came to me. Actually, now I don't seem to have it in my hand, but someone asked that we simplify it to third grade level, because people who don't know anything about raise and replace really do not understand these words. And I know that because several people have called me about this. So what I'm going to ask the town planner will be, and I can defer this. Do you want me to defer this to later? Let's do the public comment, and at the end, I'll say what I want to say. Public comment, anyone? Marge?
Okay.
Marjorie Hecht, Hoop Hole Road. Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. This is my first comment of the year.
Okay.
There is a flaw in the otherwise good proposal for the new raise and replace bylaw. The problem is that while giving more protection to oceanfront land areas, it does nothing to address the severe environmental problems caused by overbuilding on lakes, ponds, marshes, and other wetlands. To remedy this, the purpose and intent section of the proposed raise and replace bylaw should explicitly include the necessity to protect all Mashpee's waters, ocean, pond, rivers, marshes, and wetlands. As the town considers the next phase of the sewer program, it does not make sense to move forward with a bylaw that would allow an increase in the pollution problem. The taxpayers are already paying for the cleanup solution. Those few who benefit from the McMansion expansion should not be permitted to increase the pollution and the consequent burden on taxpayers. The new bylaw must apply the stricter standards of the second session for Pompanesett to the entire town. Having two different standards doesn't make sense. It also speaks to simplifying so that third grade level can understand it. All areas around water bodies need protection. I live across from John's Pond and near a Shumet. I don't want to see the shore areas become further McMansioned, as has happened in Pompanesett. The water quality is already fragile in our ponds. Nobody could swim in a Shumet for most of the summer. Aside from a town-wide sewer program, No present septic system technology avoids adding to the pollution problem. So yes, IA might be better than the current septics, but you still are putting pollution, more pollution into the waters. Instituting one raise and replace standard for all of Mashpee will make the bylaw simpler and more fair. The language should make it clear that homeowners will still be able to make improvements on their property. At stake here is protecting the middle-income majority population, protecting the summer tourist business. People won't come here if they can't swim in our water, and protecting Mashpee's history and small-town character. Thank you.
Thank you, Marge. Does anyone else wish to speak? Lynn and Barbie.
Good evening, Happy New Year. Lynn Barbie, Surf Drive. I have spent precious hours attending Zoning Board of Appeal meetings, often witnessing what seemed to me to be accommodations to builders that impact the abutters and the neighborhood. In January 2022, the ZBA had an interesting conversation with an attorney who represents many building projects, including raise and replace. At this meeting, the board and the attorney had a conversation about changing bylaws to make building easier. This was during the meeting, not after. And the attorney said at the conclusion of that conversation, quote, "We should have this talk over beer and bourbon," unquote. And at least one board member agreed. Some of you may remember my reply with visual aids in subsequent meetings. This is why I think we need a new and restrictive bylaw about raise and replace. The zoning board has far too much discretion to approve non-conforming projects. The builders and their attorneys will continue to push the ZBA to accommodate. The standard of, quote, "not substantially more detrimental," unquote, is currently in the opinion of the builders and attorneys, not the neighborhood. The state zoning bylaw, chapter 40A, section 6, explains the goal of reducing non-conforming structures. That was Mashpee's bylaw until 2018. And we do well to return to the state standard. At least, quote, "substantially less detrimental," unquote, or, quote, "more conforming," unquote, as a standard. We need to have one set of standards. The draft that is circulated has different standards for different parts of the town. That makes no sense. The section currently entitled Floodplain Papaneset is much better than the other section, the non-floodplain Papaneset. Why? It is a higher standard and more in line with the state bylaw. We've witnessed what has become of our town, water quality, density, et cetera, with the current bylaw. We should give the ZBA the tool it needs to say no to continuing nonconformities and overbuilding. More mansions on the water do nothing to address our housing crisis. The town deserves better zoning regulation. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
Hello, Colton Atkinson, 112 Algonquin. I'm here to show support for the housing production plan, specifically some of the exploration of zoning changes that would increase the amount of duplexes and multifamily houses that we have in the community. Specifically for your consideration, just that if you have duplexes and multifamily houses, it can actually reduce the amount of land usage that you have, which when you consider things like the tree area, which allows clear cutting around a building, would actually help preserve our environment by reducing the amount of area surrounding buildings. So think if you have 5 single-family houses that are 20 feet wide and 30 feet long, that's going to take 170 feet of area that trees are not going to be in. But if those were instead a townhouse and they were connected to each other, you don't have the space in between the buildings that is also devoid of trees. So that would be one way. And then also, the increase in density helps reduce the cost of sewer per person. So it actually help alleviate the cost of sewering the town if we have a slightly higher density, not talking apartment buildings that we see in Boston, but the missing middle that the housing plan points out. And then also, so you could consider adding language. I know that there's concern about the progress of the sewer and that we would build density before having sewer there. So you could consider only allowing those zoning changes to be in effect in areas that will have received sewer. That way we're not adding septic system, increased density to areas with septic, but instead building out our missing middle in areas that are already having reduced nitrogen from the sewering. And then also just consider looking back. I know they talked about striking the existing bylaw and completely rewriting it. Maybe not going to that extreme, but giving a complete review as to what's there and not just continuing to have the same bylaws that we've had for 50 years because we had them 50 years ago and we haven't looked at them again. And then finally, just take another look at eliminating parking minimums for residential areas in its entirety. So if you think about it, you're kind of forcing people to have potentially more parking than they want. Whereas if I were to go to a developer and I said, I actually don't want a parking or any parking at my house, I'd be required to have a certain amount of residential parking. And so it's just increasing the amount of parking and the impervious surface that we've got in the community, whereas you can let the free market decide how much parking they want in the area.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Okay, going back to what I was saying, someone sent me a note and I just want to address it and move on. It's not a public comment, but I'm going to address it publicly. She's asking for the language of raise and replace to be reduced to a 3rd grade level. I've asked the town planner if he would consider doing what we did with the tree bylaw, and that would be to give an example of each paragraph that is written so that people can really understand this. I mean, does anybody feel here on the board that people do not understand this bylaw?
Yes.
How many feel it's confusing? Okay. We may understand it, but we've studied it. We keep studying it. I've studied it, a ridiculous amount of time. I do understand it, but I think if we have an illustration, it will help a lot. So do you think you would do that?
I think so. I think a diagram or some visual representation of what is described in the
Yes.
bylaw is easily implemented. What is more challenging, and I think what people are asking for, is to simplify land use specific jargon to something that is understood. And that's complicated when we're trying to utilize language that's consistent with the zoning act and is contemplating land use related issues. So I think that would be more challenging, but I think I can produce, two-dimensional diagram to demonstrate what each section is contemplating.
The last point that the person asked for is that let's put penalties on people who don't follow the law. The thing is, it's already written in the zoning bylaw now that, it's $300 a day for.
You can't violate the zoning, and any zoning violation is subject to enforcement.
Yeah, subject to enforcement, and it's $300 per day as
Every
long
day
as
the violation persists.
Okay.
There's an awful lot of people who don't understand it, but if we don't make it simpler, they're gonna think it's purposeful. And we're
Good
writing
point.
it so they don't understand it, and they're gonna react negatively to it, so the harder we can work at making it simple, the better it's gonna end up.
So I think you're right. I think we'll simplify as much as is possible, but it's a near impossibility to not use words like pre-existing non-conforming,
Well, then
lot
maybe
coverage,
we
side
have
yard
to-
setback. I can't,
We have to define it. That's not in the zoning bylaw at the beginning.
well,
of
I mean, each of those
definitions.
items are defined in the bylaw. Lot
Right.
coverage, side yard setback, it is all defined in the bylaw.
It
So if
is,
anywhere
but
we're
not
lacking
as a
definition.
definition.
Not specifically within the raise and replace section, but in the 174.3, which is the definition section of the zoning bylaw
It is in the
itself.
definition section?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't see that.
And if there are definitions that require either being added, that would be an amendment to a different section of the bylaw.
Okay.
But we should consider that,
Okay.
if necessary.
Okay, we can talk about that when this comes up a
Of
little bit
course,
later.
we have a lot to cover.
Okay. We do not, we're not going over Aquay Highlands tonight because we're deferring till next meeting to make sure we've got the decision correct.
Right. I mean, have you reviewed the decision?
No.
Right.
Yes.
So,
It
I
looks
mean,
good, but
all I
it-
would suggest, if you desired, and you don't have to, you have 90 days to file this decision. But I accidentally omitted the condition relative to the as-built.
Right.
So you could accept the decision conditionally upon the condition being added, or you can wait 2 weeks and review it at your next meeting with the condition
Okay,
contemplated.
I think we should wait 2 weeks and just get
We
it off
waited-
our
we
plate.
handled this for long enough. It doesn't hurt to wait.
No harm to me, so we'll bring that back at your next meeting.
All right, welcome, Alexis.
Thank you. Hi.
Nice to see you. Happy New Year to you.
Thanks, you as well.
We're looking at the HPP overview of zoning strategies. So how do we want to do this? Do we want the board to go around or does Alexis want to make a presentation?
Well, if you don't mind, Madam Chair, I think I'll set up what I understood from our meeting with the select board.
Okay.
So that, and from, my understanding, perhaps Alexis can offer her perspective. And then I think, we'd like to listen and kind of engage in a discussion relative to these strategies. And so just what I had understood from the select board joint meeting was general satisfaction with the plan, with the exception of strategies pertaining, zoning strategies that were contemplated in the plan. I think it was goal 7 and 8 or something like that. And so, obviously, each strategy contemplated in the draft plan was developed with the Affordable Housing Committee and staff and our consultants at Barrett, subsequent to both the community engagement that was done in this process, but also via the analysis of the results received through the comprehensive plan survey. So my takeaways generally from the LCP survey and engagement and from the housing production plan engagement were a desire for housing diversity, a desire to reuse existing buildings and housing stock, and to accommodate a diversity of housing typologies within our wastewater limitations. So we propose strategies that address each of those items. And so the housing production plan itself must contemplate zoning strategies. It's a required component of the submission of the plan. So it's very important we achieve consensus relative to the strategies that are contemplated. And I, with very little exception, still stand by the strategies that were proposed as being consistent with the engagement we took part in. And so I think at this juncture, it's important for me and Alexis to understand what your primary issues are relative to the zoning strategies, so we can have a discussion about them and try and relate them to specific findings made throughout the engagement process and refine any strategies or remove any strategies or add new strategies that you think might be beneficial in consideration of the vision that's been developed around housing. Further, as has been discussed ad nauseum over years, we're confronted with a massive wastewater investment and nutrient pollution issue throughout Mashpee. We're also challenged by a very difficult housing marketplace, which is, has variable impacts across the local economy and other variables throughout the town. And so we need to, what I've often heard since beginning here was a desire to strike balance between those two realities. And I think, one takeaway that I had general concern with subsequent to the planning board, select board joint meeting was what I had heard, and I'll ask the board to correct me if I'm wrong, was the desire to omit or otherwise amend strategies to achieve the goal of housing diversity and increased production of supply in a manner that is balanced. I seemed to hear that achieving or implementing strategies to achieve a goal of increased housing production would not be supported whilst we haven't solved the wastewater challenge. So if we are going to elevate the wastewater challenge to a place of prominence above housing issues, I think we need to understand that so that the strategies are more consistent with what you're desiring to accomplish. Now, that's not what I've heard over the past 5 or 6 years. So I want to understand specifically, if possible, what strategies were particularly offensive in consideration of the wastewater goals and the housing goals, and work collectively to improve those strategies so that we can submit this plan for state adoption and acceptance. And so with that, I suppose I'll look to Alexis to add anything I've missed. But just kind of in closing, we are already extremely limited in our ability to produce housing in the short term without an amendment to the Comprehensive Watershed Management Plan. And so we're extremely bound by the density requirements contemplated in that plan. And so these strategies that are currently in place are already restricted by those limitations. And so I think that's important to understand. And further, if we have production goals that go above and beyond the allowances granted in the 2015 CWMP, and we don't submit a notice of project change of the CWMP, we are unlikely to be able to realize the full scope of the housing production goal. So we need to talk about that.
Yeah, but remember, this is a 5-year plan.
Yeah.
Right? This is a 5-year plan. I don't think it's our place to say we need to change the CWMP for this plan. I think we need to monitor the town's progress on the CWMP, and every 5 years, look at if we have expansion capacity. Do you know what I mean? Like, we don't have to have every single thing we're gonna do in the next 25 years in here. It's just the first 5 years. Do you know what I mean? And since we've just started implementing our nitrogen management plan, I don't think that we can also, as part of this plan, change the nitrogen management plan, change our sewering plan, change our clean water actions right now, when we've just started them. Because we're not sure that they're gonna work. I mean, we have engineers saying they're gonna work, but the effluents from these places, there's supposed to be wells that are gonna go into the ground after an area is sewered to see if it's really working and reducing the nitrogen and the pollution in the groundwater coming from that area. And that takes time.
And another thing you gotta remember, the nitrogen that's already in there,
It's
it
gonna
takes
take
20 years to leach out from like a septic system to be clean. So even with the sewer system going in, we might not see any results for 10 years, 15 years that really look at this as working. We may see for the first couple of years, gee, we're not getting a good read out of this. I think this plan is fine because we need housing, but I'd like to hold on this to see, like 1 or 2 years into the sewer system. To see,
Some of the things, hold off on some of the things.
Some of the things, yeah.
Some of the things.
to see, okay, now we can add this, because, we can add houses over here, because we know the sewer line's going down there and stuff. Or we may have to add more sewer lines, with this. But we really gotta wait till the sewer start
Okay.
coming
Because
on.
our LCP survey definitely has water as
Right.
the most important thing.
Okay, let me talk a little bit here. On the survey, the question number 4 was, question, most serious problem facing Mashpee. Question 4. The first problem, they said the highest percentage was 87% said water quality is very serious or serious. Then comes traffic, which I found shocking. Then cost of living was 71%. This is all very serious or serious. Climate change, 67%. Solid waste management, 66%. And the seventh one is 62% housing, is very serious. Well, that's the majority, so.
And
but
number
it's-
4 at 68 was loss of open space.
Okay, I just have a 7 there. So going back to the flow neutral, on page 44, first paragraph of the proposed Mashpee comprehensive, what is it called? Comprehensive Waste Management Plan included build-out assumptions based upon current zoning and developable land. Thus, to remain eligible for future 0% financing on eligible water pollution abatement projects, any change in wastewater flow assumptions would require an update to the CWMP. That does not feel good to me. That really does not feel right, because we shouldn't be messing or tinkering, as I called it, with the plan, because we just don't know. We have too many unknowns here. So I say no to that. And so my question will be, if we keep the existing flow neutral bylaw, say we build some multifamily units, say they're on the whole property is 40,000 square feet, are we going to build 2 units, 2 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms to follow the 10,000 square foot understanding that we have?
I mean, yes, without a variance, you're bound by the flow neutral bylaw.
Okay,
so you
that's
can't
it, the
exceed-
variance, because you talked about in here about having a variance if somebody wants to do a 5th bedroom and they only have 40,000 square feet.
So there is a provision in the flow neutral bylaw to issue variances relative, whether you're on, if it's on sewer, the variance is issued by the sewer commission. If you're still on a septic or an IA, the variance would be issued by the Board of Appeals, or excuse me, the Board of Health, pardon me. However, absent a variance, the density, you're still limited to the densities prescribed in the flow neutral bylaw. So if you're in a 4-bedroom lot by right, and you have 40,000 square feet, you're either getting a 4-bedroom single-family house or 2-bedroom duplexes. You can't have 5-bedroom or 6 bedrooms without the issuance of the variance.
And what would be the basis for getting a variance under that scenario, that 5th bedroom?
Well, it's different than like a zoning variance where specific hardships are defined. I don't have the answer to that question.
Okay.
Karen.
Can I comment on?
13 kids.
So the sewer commission has a whole provision for how they would issue a variance. So that is in there at the sewer commission regs, they outline it. For the Board of Health, I'm not sure, because currently their regulations for septic online, at least, I'm sure we could ask the health department, but it's not posted right now because I think they're updating it because of the Title V update. So I'm not sure what their provisions would be for issuing a variance, but I understand that for the sewer commission, part of it is there needs to be an assessment of current capacity in the, within the sewer system currently. So that is how that variance will go about. But as Evan said, it's not tied to, the zoning board of appeals or anything. It's either the sewer commission or the Board of Health.
Okay, so we don't really know what the criteria are.
That's a very good question. The only thing that I know of offhand for the sewer commission is they're looking at capacity. One of the things that I wanted to raise as a consideration that I don't think is in the sewer commission regulations right now, but I've seen in other communities, is prioritizing affordable housing when considering variances or when considering sewer allocation. We did not have that as a strategy in the draft that you've had. Since that meeting, Evan and I have had, extensive conversations about ways to address this. And so that is one thing that you could do within the sewer commission regulations, is to consider, in how they determine the criteria for issuing a variance.
So it would be very specific. There would be no ambiguity about whether you could get a variance. These are the factors we'd have to look at in order to enter a variance.
That's a good idea.
So,
yeah.
I mean, I think, I really like what you're saying, Karen. I think we have to have a strong statement that we're not advocating for change in the CWMP at this time, but that for affordable housing, would like, and variances to, consider affordable housing as a criteria for issuing a variance. But this is like affordable housing, capital A, affordable housing that would go on our subsidized housing inventory. This isn't like an attainable unit or diversity unit or whatever. It's like affordable housing that goes on the shy. Very regulated, very restrictive.
Yeah,
It's
see, we
Chapter
want to remove
40Bs.
some of the discretion. We want to make it, okay, we can do it, no, we can't do it, we can do it.
Right.
Yes, we can,
So- And that would cover, a development that had chapter 40B.
right?
Something that Alexis and I have discussed relative to, the way we contemplate any future or potential amendment to CWMP if desired. The sewer commission, that's their plan. So we considered the potential of a strategy or an action merely to commence a discussion with the sewer commission, a conversation relative to the affordable housing goals prescribed in the plan, and their ability to submit a notice of project change if desired by the sewer commission, if in time it's determined the capacity is adequate and the need is great, and that the treatment facility is producing results as intended.
That sounds very good. So I guess I didn't realize that this HPP was going to go so far beyond the affordable housing. And if we're talking about something that is upsetting, that's one thing that immediately got to me was number 8. Well, actually, I think you've addressed it, Evan, in your notes to us about taking out the two-family home by right in residential districts.
Yeah,
Number 8 or number 7?
Well,
I
no, let me
believe-
go to that, but yours first.
so that
You
was
have it
number
as-
7, and you should note, the board should note that the numbers I put in my PowerPoint don't align.
Yeah, I
The
see that.
numbers
Okay.
in your document. So I took them one at a time, and after our meeting with the select board, I just wanted to take a minute to reevaluate each strategy in particular consideration.
Do you want us to go down the list on the implementation?
Oh, whatever you prefer, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Can we use the document, not the, can we use the document, not his misnumbered?
Use the
PowerPoint.
document,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
on page 58. Okay. The first, I think the first 6, I don't think we have any problem with page 57, do we?
On page 58,
Well, let's start, where do we begin?
number 5 above,
Okay,
number 5, should number 5 be, I see, forget it. So there's affordable, on number 57, there's affordable housing development. This is stuff that will go on the shy.
Yes.
Okay, all right, sorry. Go ahead, Karen, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Number 7.
I think we're going to start with number 7, and we're going to go around and see how people feel about this, if they like it, if they don't, explain. Explore zoning mechanisms for increasing options for housing choice outside of the town's current open space incentive development bylaw. So that's potential options to consider include.
Madam Chair, may I just make one quick comment, because there was an error on that I pointed out last time?
Are you talking
Yep.
about striking this
Yes,
part?
yes, especially because it came up tonight, and I just want to remind you.
Go ahead, we know, but if you want to say it.
Sure,
for the
sure. So
benefit.
that reference to striking the bylaw that was under Strategy 7, that was misplaced, my fault. That was intended to go under Strategy 14,
Got it.
which is about, in particular, looking at the OSID and considering removing that bylaw. So that was a misplaced bullet, just so everyone, just to refresh.
Got it.
Does everybody have the housing production plan?
Yes,
I don't think I do.
The one we got a couple weeks ago.
it's in there.
Well, that's in there too. What am I looking at?
You're looking at the implementation.
Do you have an extra copy for Dale?
You're looking at page
In this?
58 of the housing production
think it's
plan.
really important.
The housing strategies.
Okay, housing strategies.
50, starting with 58, page 58.
Oh, hold on.
That's what I think we got here.
Hold the brain there.
No, but I have it on.
Do you have it, Dale?
I think a copy's coming to you.
Guys, when I asked when We advise to keep your copies and bring them back.
I didn't bring it.
I brought mine back, but then I see this whole pile.
That's the backup. That's what I asked for, the
All
survey,
right,
the workshop.
I brought my copy
Right.
back.
Page 58, okay.
And I
We're-
see
we're-
where we're striking that whole thing.
Read number 7 to yourself again, so you know what we're talking about. And then the bullets, we're going to go one by one.
Just, Madam Chair, just a note, as you go through number 7, the way I numbered my slides
Yeah.
relate directly in order the bullets.
Okay.
As you review those are recommendations that
Okay.
I've provided for your
Okay,
consideration.
I see that.
That relate to the
So
bullets in order.
Put in the overview of strategies, go to Evans. It said here it was supposed to be in red, so I didn't know. Nothing's in red.
You didn't get it in color.
Yeah, whatever, but we can figure it out, I guess.
Would you like mine?
Okay, no, that's okay. We've got 7 points that he's listed, and he says these do these all go under number 7?
They are all related to number 7.
Okay, perfect. So, see the first bullet under 7 on the page 58. Page 58, the first bullet matches number 1. This is what I'm looking at for Evan. Okay, you got it, all right. Establish overlay districts in areas with suitable infrastructure or planned infrastructure that would allow townhouses or multifamily buildings. So maybe I would like your red.
Right, I see. So you're blending, that suggestion is blending bullets 1 and 2 in the draft?
Yes,
Right, right.
I'm just
Understood.
expanding a little bit further.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just for you, Karen.
And the proposed changes, thank you, the proposed changes are in red. So what he's written here, I'll read and then I'll tell you when it's in red or change.
That's okay.
Does everybody have it?
I mean, did this change? What's on page 58?
Let's see. It did.
It's
Establish
combining the two
conventional
bullets.
zoning overlay districts or form-based code overlay districts. Okay, did you combine something?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, I don't have that.
You don't have what? This, you don't have this from,
I've been using something else. I didn't know that these changed.
okay.
Well, Mary, they didn't change. These are my own staff recommendations in consideration of the responses received by the joint boards.
Okay, so this is,
Well, I'm sorry.
That's it.
is that it?
Looks like it.
Yeah, that, with the red text, yes.
Okay, all right, so the changes in red, well, first I'll read, establishing.
And these are not
convention-
changes, they're recommendations to
Okay,
consider.
recommendations, proposed changes.
That's right.
Proposed recommendations.
That's correct.
Establishing conventional zoning overlay districts or form-based code overlay districts if desired. That's a proposed change. Let me just call it a change, okay? We know it's a proposed. In areas with suitable infrastructure, meaning infrastructure, wastewater, sewers, or planned infrastructure that would allow townhouses and/or multifamily buildings, change, commonly identified as building types in the missing middle. Does anybody have any issues with that?
No, it's very clear.
I have no problem with that.
The only thing I would like to try to get in there is the priority of this being located on properties that don't, right now, don't allow housing, such as commercial. Like, I'm not sure if we should plop this down in the middle of a large residential district in town. I think this needs to be in busier areas
That would allow townhouses, okay.
in town.
So we would want to know what overlay we're talking about. Where are you thinking?
So the strategy is for us to evaluate
Yeah,
that. We've already generally identified, as Mary has just noted, prioritizing redevelopment of commercial areas, notably
Right.
C2 on the east and
You've already identified quite a few.
And so, but the scale of that redevelopment will generally be greater than something like a duplex.
Yes.
The scale will be larger. So if there are desires for smaller housing typologies in the form of an overlay, it would generally be outside of those districts. So there's no overlay proposed today. It's just,
No.
this plan is asking us to consider, as a strategy, evaluating the potential for these building types as overlay districts in variable parts of the town. It doesn't prescribe any particular or specific zoning district, neighborhood, or any other specificity.
So what, by this statement here, or planned infrastructure, if you live in a zone where there will never be sewers,
I wouldn't suggest we consider increasing density there.
okay.
And it's important to note, again, just though with flow neutral, we're not necessarily increasing density in consideration of bedrooms.
Are we doing any infrastructure sewering in areas that are commercial property?
Yeah, we are. This is generally the areas identified. I don't remember if we're coming down to Meeting House Road or not. Yeah, that's the answer to that question.
You have a comment on this paragraph?
What's the missing middle? Explain that to me.
May I?
Go.
Okay, so, right, everybody there was this huge building boom in America, single-family homes, right?
Right.
But still, in the cities, you had apartment buildings, right?
Right.
What's the missing middle? It's all the different housing in between. The duplex, the triplex, the small, like, 4-unit building, the medium building.
All right, I got you.
Not versus the skyscraper.
It's all of the other building
So-
types that aren't single-family dwellings, that aren't larger apartments. So in the context of Mashpee, we're generally thinking, mixed-use housing, shop housing, duplexes, ADUs.
Yeah.
Townhouses, cottage courts is a typology I like and think fits in with fabric as infill development, but these are the types of housing.
And
that we're
see
talking
how he used the word infill, right?
Yeah.
So like Hyannis is using this for some of those properties that are blighted and there's nothing there. It's just a dirt pit.
Yeah.
And what they're doing is they're allowing the missing middle. They're allowing fourplexes, triplexes. But the architecture is so good that you can't really tell that it's not a single-family unit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's cleverly disguised to look smaller, and it softens it. It's infill.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any more comments on number 1?
I like combining 1 and 2. I do think that people are gonna look to, like I did, look to where are we sewering and say, gee, there's a lot of residential, single-family, neighborhoods. Are we suggesting that we go in there and do that? I think we need to somehow say, with a priority to areas that are already heavily developed or commercially developed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Something like that, so that, just so that again, we haven't identified them exactly, but I can just see that the Timberlake neighborhood, they're getting sewered. If they see this, they're gonna go, oh, we're gonna get multifamily buildings too. They might really react strongly in a
What would
negative
be the
way.
best phrase to put in there to avoid that kind of problem?
We can consider that
Yeah.
and certainly
Okay.
modify accordingly.
Right, because,
Okay.
like, I understand you don't necessarily want it to be commercial, limited to commercial, but you understand what I'm saying. I don't want it to be in the heart of a single-family home neighborhood.
I think that's well
Okay.
understood. We can work on that.
Like Route 130, do you know what I mean?
Yes, I
Like,
do.
okay.
He's got it. He's a quick study. Okay, so 1 and 2 will be combined with that caveat.
Heard and understood.
Number 3, allowing conversion of, it reads on page 58, conversion of existing single-family homes to small multifamily homes by special permit. What he's saying here, what Evan is saying here, allowing conversion of existing single-family homes to small multifamily homes by special permit. Considering over 80% of stock is single-family and over 70% support converting existing buildings into housing, it seems prudent to evaluate this as a strategy. Do not recommend deleting.
So,
All right, that,
I like that. Why do I like
Something
that?
about a certain square footage, or, I mean, it would have to be a big house, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it generally would, so I mean, this again, it relates back to what we heard through the surveys. We have 82%, I think, single-family housing stock in Mashpee. The vast majority of people have a preference for utilizing existing buildings to convert into housing.
Yes.
And so, and this also works within flow neutral, because if you have a 7-bedroom house that is large, we could consider, by way of a special permit, converting that existing house that currently has 7 bedrooms and is bound by that 7 bedrooms
Keeping
to
the flow
7
neutral.
1-bedroom apartments.
1 bedroom.
Yeah,
With-
Or
so
some other mix.
Falmouth, downtown Falmouth has this, you know that neighborhood by the library?
Oh, yeah.
And there's like these big, big old houses, but there's more than 2 cars, right? Those have been split up into little apartments. And because the building boom, the last building boom in town was huge houses, and now people are overhoused. And I think Duxbury, Alexis said that Duxbury has a model bylaw on this. You can take these big buildings and cut them up.
A lot of it in Falmouth, there, I think they're called halfway houses.
Yeah, this would not be a group home.
A group home, but a lot of people buying those big houses, 1 room, and a lot of them are, drug addicts, they're trying to get
Yeah,
off
this
it.
would not be that,
But
yeah.
But it's happening in neighborhoods when you do this type of thing,
Oh.
I'm gonna come in, buy,
I'll offer one example. When I was in grad school, I lived in College Hill in Providence. I lived on Prospect Street in Old Mansion. That was converted into 10 1-bedroom apartments. And it just looks like a beautiful house. This is exactly what we're contemplating. So it would operate within the confines of the flow neutral bylaw and would utilize existing stock to create a housing typology we have none of. It
I
seems
mean, if you don't like
imprudent
it,
to
I
me to remove
won't,
it.
you know?
Can I make an additional comment about it? Well, just to clarify with Duxbury, they don't actually have the example I was talking about with Duxbury, I don't know how they did it. It must have been done, prior to their current zoning, but there's just an example of a beautiful captain's home, along the water that was converted at some point into 6 condos. And I assure you, I mean, that's not addressing an affordability component because I'm sure they are pricey, but it is addressing a missing type of housing, which is also what the housing production plan is intended to do. The primary goal is to move you toward 10%, but you can also address other housing needs. So I think, if I'm understanding your concern about group homes or things like that, I think if someone were to buy a property and convert it in this way, I mean, just the price point of it would, without subsidy, would be, it would still be rather expensive, I'm
Not a
sure.
lodging facility, not congregate housing.
Right.
This would be separate housing units completely.
It's a no-brainer, yes.
Well,
The only thing I would like to add on there is some type of parking control. That's the only thing. Like, let's say you have a building, it's now 4 units. Do you really want 8 cars parked around it? That doesn't, you know what I mean? That's
No.
gonna kill the look of a single-family home.
I think that gets at one of the strategies we'll be contemplating, which is the reduction of parking.
That's right, right.
But this would be a parking lot, a parking space control. Like, you couldn't have more than 1.5 per unit,
So not just a minimum, but you're saying a maximum.
a maximum.
so this house would look, it would be one central door, and then people go in that door, and then they diverge to their apartments. So you'd think it's a single-family home.
In most cases, yes. If there were separate entrances, I mean, that would be evaluated
Might
through a
have-
special
Some of
permit
these-
application if
Yeah.
conditions
I
necessitate.
have some apartments in the back, and that might be an entrance.
Oh, they could go.
Because some of these
side
really
door.
large houses, right? The people that own them, right? They're gonna retire and eventually move on. Do you know what I mean? What happens to that big building now? Is our market always gonna be able to carry these large McMansions? Or will there eventually be a market to split them up into apartments?
I
Okay,
got 5
so
rooms,
are
you
we
can all come
okay
my
with
place right
number,
now.
Do you?
are we okay with number 3?
Thanks, Mike.
Well, I think we got to think about, were these houses built for that many tenants? When you think about quality of life
What are
and.
we talking, like a 6,000, 5,000 square foot house?
I mean, it totally depends on whatever home is being submitted for an application, but if that's
Yeah.
Right.
like 2,000 square foot or it's unclear.
Yeah.
But it's also doesn't prescribe how many units. It totally depends on the existing conditions of
Right.
whatever dwelling is there.
Right.
And so for this strategy, all I wanted to communicate in my recommendation is that I believe it would be imprudent to remove it from consideration. And it should be evaluated based on the feedback we received through engagement.
And it is
Whether that
by
includes
special
parking,
permit.
or it includes like a density cap. These are things that would need to be evaluated, but I would not recommend removing it as a
No, I
potential.
agree.
Oh, good.
I agree with that.
How many approve this paragraph here?
Yes.
Yeah. and
Everyone?
Can we put the parking thing in there?
We'll
I made
work
a
on
note
some
of it.
parking language.
Okay.
Okay.
And maybe
good,
the
great.
density thing, well, I'm just thinking like, say, you turn a really big house into 6 units. These houses might be old, they're not equipped to deal with like sound, so you have, say you're walking around, you're
It's
walking.
apartment life.
And it's like boom, boom.
I think with such a
My
substantial.
neighbors now have a dog, and that's just life.
Right.
With the substantial improvement, Dale, all the.
You're so good.
All the construction, interior construction would need to comport with modern building codes.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
older houses would need to become compliant with
Upgrade,
current
yeah.
building codes. And, again, additionally, the density of any house is going to be bound by the existing condition of how many bedrooms are there.
Bedrooms. I bet you'd be lucky to get 2 or 3 units in there. I don't
So
know.
we're not talking like a house that's gonna be converted into 25 units.
Right.
It's just not gonna be possible with the existing stock. When I went through the Willow Bend bedroom counting, fun, the largest homes in Willow Bend, there are 2, had 7 bedrooms. Most are 3 and 4, some are 5, but you're really talking 2, 3, 4 units in the largest homes around.
And then each
Mashpee.
unit has to have a complete bathroom and a complete kitchen.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So that eats up the space real quick.
Okay, I don't want to rush, but let's just move on here because we do have a lot to cover tonight. And I'm
I'm
going to
out of
say we're
caffeine.
going to be late tonight, for sure. Number 4, allowing 2-family homes by right in residential districts. Right there, that's questionable. By right, that's the word. We don't mind the special permit in 3. I don't know how other people feel about
Yeah,
this.
I do not like 4. I do not like 4. We have the ADU bylaw. I think we should stick with the ADU bylaw and see what kind of housing that
Okay,
produces.
So actually, Evan answers this in his red hand. Can delete and consider it covered by 1 or specify a desire for a 2-family overlay. I think Main Street, Mashpee Center overlay, that sounds like a reasonable place. But let's just get rid of it for right now.
Yeah, and you have don't you have a multifamily overlay?
I do think it's relatively covered generally in number 1
Yeah.
on my list.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
If
think.
you wanted to provide specificity relative to duplexes, I would recommend it be done in the form of an overlay to be more consistent with the findings of the comprehensive plan. But if you feel comfortable with it sitting under the umbrella of number 1 on my recommendations, I
Yeah.
think it covers it as an option, because it's within the whole missing middle typology.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and to tell you the honest truth, if we're gonna allow duplexes, I'd rather allow 4plexes. Do you know what I
Does
mean?
anybody does anybody want this left in? Does anybody feel they like it? By right, and we all know what by right means.
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor of deleting
I want it
paragraph
gone.
4?
Aye.
Aye,
Right.
okay, gone. Number 5, amending the town's cluster development bylaw to allow additional residential uses beyond what is allowed in the underlying zoning. In red, he says.
Oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
This pair housing diversity,
I
this
get
pair
it
is
now.
housing diversity with open space preservation goals, I would keep.
And just to clarify, if I may, right now, the only way that you can accomplish that is in the open space incentive development bylaw, which is very hard to do. The cluster development bylaw is not as onerous. I don't, I mean, it's a smaller.
It's not. People
Right.
are more comfortable using it.
Right, and so if you take some of those allowances that right now in the table of uses say only under OSID, if they were under OSID or cluster bylaw, it just makes it that much easier to do so.
Tell us, what is the difference in severity or complication of a cluster bylaw development versus the OSID?
That over to Evan.
So just like, I mean, OSID and the cluster development bylaw each have a minimum requirement and a minimum provision of open space at 50% of the land area of the project. A cluster development can be had at 5 acres or more, whereas an OSID can only be done at 20 acres or more. And so the OSID has some benefit in that it provides bonus multipliers for the preservation of open space, either on or off site, to be transferred into a project area. So you get more density than would otherwise be allowed because of the transfer of development rights.
Okay, why does the OSID have to be 20 acres?
That's just how it's been, that's how it exists.
How would it work if it were 5 acres?
So if the cluster development bylaw really has the provision of open space requirement and an affordable housing component already. And so currently using Tudor Terrace as your most recent example, you had a 6-acre site, 3 of it was restricted as open space, and you had 3 single-family dwellings. What this bylaw is considering is just increasing the building types that would be allowed to benefit from a cluster. So for example, you could preserve 50% as open space and have, instead of 3 single-family dwellings, have, 3
Townhouses.
connected townhouses, or that provide the same number of bedrooms but are smaller units. So you're pairing your housing diversity goal with your open space preservation goals.
And this is by special permit?
That would be up for you to determine as the zoning change is considered. But
Well, the cluster development bylaw is by special
it is
permit.
currently a
By special
special permit, so
permit.
unless reevaluated, it would stay a special permit.
But you're right.
Would you be inclined to reevaluate it to make it by right? No.
I mean,
The
I
problem
would
is-
say yes, but I.
Right, but you know that means that everything that Ed Pesci does and everything we do on these cluster subdivisions, now the building department has to do. Do you know what I mean?
No, I don't know what you mean.
It puts it all on a staff, a staff department. You know what I mean? Like, we hand off this approved plan to the building department, and all they have to do is follow those plans and look at the building that's being built, right? We've taken care of the review of the infrastructure and the road and all of that. I mean, if we don't do that under a special permit, somebody has to do it. So are we going to hire a town engineer to do it? See, this way, there is a benefit to having a special permit, and that is that staff isn't doing these reviews. It's done in a public board. Your butters get to comment on it, and we have an engineer that helps us do it. And guess who pays for that engineer? The applicant, right? If we just make it by right, then the town taxpayers are paying for the engineer, not the applicant. So I think cluster subdivisions, I think we should keep special permit. Absolutely.
Yeah, this strategy doesn't contemplate removing the special permit
Okay,
status.
that's
It
what I
contemplates
wanted.
only allowing additional building types to benefit from the cluster bylaw, which is you get some building typology, whether it be a duplex, triplex, cottage court.
So you're
You
talking
would need to
about
prescribe
in
the building types.
residential uses, so it could be sitting in an area where there are single-family houses only.
It would, so you wouldn't want to expand the allowed building types to be a building type that would be grossly inconsistent with the character of the neighborhood. So you'd be talking about smaller townhouses.
Right,
or-
well, and to clarify, that's already allowed under OSID anyway, which could take place in anywhere.
Right,
If
just-
anywhere there was 20 acres.
Just imagine that we modify the transfer of development right bylaw that we call OSID. And with these cluster developments, if there's an off-site provision of open space, then maybe they can put 6 units in there instead of just 3. That way, they get them all together, they cluster them together, like Collins was saying, right? And Colin was saying, and then they're, Colton, sorry. And then you're cutting down less trees, your infrastructure costs are lower, right? And what does the town get? The town gets open space. And then there's more different types of housing available for people to live in.
Thank you, Cole, for trees.
See, he listens, he's learning, it's great.
And I think what this sort of thing does is it's not just saying that these are allowed across the residential districts. It's within a cluster development project, which you have to go through, a certain special permit process to have approved.
Well,
That's where,
I'm thinking of Tudor Terrace now. That was a completely single-family, as far as I know, residential. And then those three houses, if those three houses could have been, what,
Well, that was added,
three town,
right? That was added to the existing cluster subdivision. But what if you start from scratch?
no, but what if you could put a cluster subdivision there?
I mean, you could.
You could.
Yeah, clusters, in Mashpee, you're required, so first you need to have twice the minimum land area, so in the R5, that's 4 acres. And so at anything 5 acres or more requires a cluster already. So if you're already, if any residential development in Mashpee now, more or less, is gonna be a cluster subdivision. So
Right.
why not take advantage of the potential opportunity to increase the ability for different housing types while maintaining the open space preservation component? And again, this
I'm
is
just
just,
looking at the aesthetics of it. Let's say Tudor Terrace, say they built 3 townhouses there. How could that possibly look good in that neighborhood?
well, so I think this is why we're considering this as a potential strategy. There are more questions. My recommendation, though, would be not to remove the potential before we evaluate those considerations.
Okay, and this would be by special permit,
But-
and we could say that
Yeah.
it would not be appropriate in this particular,
I think a perfect,
Location.
I often refer to cottage courts because I think they're a lovely building typology
are.
for a predominantly single-family fabric, whereas Tudor Terrace would have been 3, I think 4-bedroom homes. That's 12
right,
bedrooms.
12 bedrooms.
That would have provided an opportunity to perhaps have 6 clustered, small 2-bedroom cottages that are predominantly single-family in character with shared amenities while maintaining 50% of that site as open space. So you're generating
Three more.
many more units at the same density and meeting a need for housing units we do not currently have. So these are strategies that would need to be further evaluated, but again, I would not remove them from consideration before considering their full potential and also going through some sort of deliberative process to determine what building typologies we would allow and where. Because that may differ across zoning districts, it might differ by neighborhood, it might differ by land area, but these are discussions that we would want to have.
So would we figure out these areas in advance, or it would be just as
They come
something comes along here?
So strategy number 1 is about establishing unique overlays in specific areas with specific criteria. Amending the cluster development bylaw is specific to the residential zoning districts. So that would be variable building typologies across the R3 and the R5, because that's where cluster developments are allowed.
and so I think to your point, you were saying that you would want to consider what sorts of types would you be comfortable with? Maybe you're not comfortable with, small multifamily, but maybe you would be comfortable with cottage clusters or something like that. So I think it's about evaluating, okay, if this could happen in the R3 or R5, what would be compatible? What would we be comfortable having
And
as part of the cluster?
non-offensive,
I immediately, I see a picture in my mind of a very small cottage court with heavy landscaping, so that it's almost like a botanical garden.
Right, but there are some developers that want to do townhouses. They want to do townhouses, they want to rent townhouses, they want to maintain, they don't want to do condominiums and sell them off. They want to be a property management company and rent and see townhouses as one of the easiest typologies for that type of business. Do you know what I mean? Like the cottage community lends to like a condominium, like ownership.
So we're talking rental.
I mean, cottage courts could be rental as
No,
well.
it could be rental or it could be, but I know that they're gonna get sold off. Because there's too much exterior surface space, so there's no property management company. Property management companies want multifamily buildings because the maintenance of the exterior surfaces is less because there's less surface area
Yeah.
than separated units.
Okay, so are we all fine with paragraph 5?
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, unanimous. Number 6,
6 caused some consternation in the focus group that I was in, which had our director of DNR and a member of the sewer commission. This
okay,
was-
that's number 8.
Yeah.
On page 59. Conduct an analysis of buildable residential land and consider reducing dimensional requirements in appropriate areas to better match the surrounding density on the ground.
I think this,
His proposed change is, this is here because of a stated desire by the community to create more starter homes. Quote, smaller lot sizes would result in smaller homes that would translate to greater affordability. With that said, I do think our efforts are best placed on diversifying the stock and not on increasing single-family home production. I think we all agree on the single-family home production, do we not?
well, I
I
think
mean,
if we have, do we have unbuildable lots in town?
Yes.
I think that we should, it's better to do a survey of unbuildable lots,
Like undersized lots.
undersized
specifically.
lots. to
Not
s-
enough frontage or something, yeah.
To see if we could introduce an affordable lot bylaw, which is basically you could build on it if it's an affordable house,
Yeah.
Which is, yeah, we have, so that's,
right? But
Under
this,
strategy.
this I think needs to wait until we're full force on our sewering. I mean, an affordable lots bylaw I would support, but not without that affordability component.
may I make a comment just from the focus groups?
Yes.
Because I do remember this discussion well. And so the original strategy, it was actually just reducing dimensional requirements and based on the discussion of like, whoa, let's take a look, let's step back and see what would that even apply to. So we did, take it a step back and say, first let's analyze what this would apply to, if it even makes sense to look to see if there are areas where that would make sense. But also to Evan's point, I think if we have to, pick and choose what should be prioritized, then I
Affordable
understand.
housing.
I'd put this on hold. I think that, I mean, their reaction was so strong. And I tried to talk them into it, and they weren't having it. And one of them is on the sewer commission, so I just, and they're both, I find them extremely, like, reasonable whenever they talk about growth in town. So I'm just concerned that we keep it in there. I think we should take it out.
I think we should keep it in. I think having more I think a starter home is like diversifying the stock. It's a different type of home, really, for a different type of person in their life. You know what I mean? A starter family, that's younger folks.
So you think we should identify
Well, maybe we could
lots for
identify
starter
I
homes?
like what you said
All right.
earlier
What
about
would it
that.
be for?
For starter homes or affordable homes?
Consider reducing dimensional requirements.
Well, why don't we conduct an analysis of residential lots to see the potential for an affordable lots bylaw or a starter home lot bylaw?
I mean, something that could also be
Well-
considered, just as I think now on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
is your cluster subdivisions bylaw. This is a mechanism that allows you to establish whatever lot size is appropriate for the project in an effort to maximize open space. And so, now I'm losing my train of thought. Carry on, I'm gonna get back to you.
Can I interject,
Yeah.
just to kind of go on what Mary's saying a bit? I think if for strategy in the draft, not in your comments, strategy 5 about that small, affordable units on lots that are otherwise unbuildable. And strategy 8, I think the first step to both of those is kind of doing that analysis of buildable residential land. That is kind of the primary step to both of those, right? To see how many non-conforming lots there are.
Yeah, if you could strike, consider reducing dimensional requirements as part of that action, just do the study of it to see what the potential is. So you might come up with 10 lots. It's not gonna kill anybody if we build on 10 lots.
Right.
What if you came up with 500 lots? Then that becomes a problem. So it's like we don't even know the magnitude of the impact. And I get it, Dale, yeah, we should continue on this path, because we do need starter homes.
I did remember what I was going to say.
Go ahead.
So the current cluster development bylaw allows you to reduce lot sizes to whatever is appropriate.
Right.
But you cannot exceed the number of lots that would otherwise be allowed in the base zoning. So if it's a 2-acre zoning and you have 6 acres, you're not getting more than 3 dwellings, regardless of the lot size. So you could reevaluate the incentive mechanism in the cluster bylaw for single family, because you allow additional building lots for greater provision of open space. Perhaps you could just consider slightly increasing that incentive to get more than would otherwise be prescribed for smaller lots. So perhaps the bonus incentive increases for the same provision of open space. As an example, that would stay relatively under the umbrella of your existing framework, but provide an incentive for smaller lots and greater density, if in the appropriate Seward areas.
So I'm just thinking, those smaller lots making just more naturally affordable single-family homes, not capital A affordable. If a developer still has to have X amount of land to preserve that open space, it's not really gonna cut project costs to the point where they'd be able to carry that over to the buyer, right? I mean,
So my point is, it would have to be paired with the ability to have increased units.
Okay,
So the current incentive really never really gets you more than an additional lot.
okay.
There's just not enough area. So what if it allowed you to get an additional 2 or 3 lots? I don't know. But that's how it could be potentially evaluated, Dale.
Okay.
But I still stand by my initial recommendation. I think the focus should be on the production of missing middle typologies and the conversion of existing stock, as opposed to, because, you're right, Dale. I mean, our age group, we're stuck, but there's also almost no mobility within the housing marketplace now. Whereas if we were to create certain housing types and incentivize the natural kind of mobility and attrition that happens in the marketplace, then the existing stock of single-family starter homes, which we have a lot of small homes on small lots already, just people have nowhere to go. So they're stuck there. So if we were to focus on those strategies that reignite the ability for people to have some mobility in the marketplace, it should open up more opportunities for people to access those starter homes.
Okay, I would love to have a precise example, because I'm thinking of what were starter homes in Levittown. How would they look? I mean, how much would
Starter
they?
home is a
Look like
two-bedroom
a,
ranch.
I mean, I think
I
a
know,
perfect
a
example.
Habitat for
How does
Humanity
somebody
type of
afford a
house.
starter home here?
Well, I mean, so that's my point, Karen, is like a perfect example is the Conomet Highland subdivision, Fox Hill Road, Silverleaf Lane. That's in a zone 2. The lots are very small. They're 1 and 2 bedroom, single-family dwellings. But there's nowhere for the people who own those homes to go. They often will stay there. And they're higher priced. So that the price is going to remain high and the ability to access those units is going to be very impossible so long as there's not that mobility, so long as people are staying in those homes for
Okay,
long.
I get that.
You
I get
understand?
that. There's nowhere to go. But how do the people afford these starter homes? What do they cost? I mean,
Well, they're expensive, Karen. It's Cape Cod.
I
It's
mean,
very
all
expensive
the
here.
houses are
The data
Is
is
it
self-evident.
Is it
So
a
the
$300,000?
The affordable lot bylaw that we have in Yarmouth, right, targeted these lots. So in some subdivisions, people bought 2 lots so they could put their house on 1 lot and have a backyard, right?
Okay.
So as their family got larger, right, they weren't allowed to build another unit on that adjoining lot because subdivision
They were
law.
merged, right.
It was merged.
Right, that's,
So we allow the homeowner to build on the next lot if they're gonna sell it to somebody in their family or sell it to a low or moderate income household.
Well, that's all well and good, but we're not talking about buying 2 lots. 'Cause can barely afford one.
I think to your question though, Karen, if affordability is unlikely to change without additional supply. So, yes, Cape Cod is expensive. I think it was $730,000 medium home price.
Yeah.
That's staggering. That's not going to improve without the implementation of some of these strategies.
The other thing is the desire to move. A lot of people are always talking like, oh, retired people, they're overhoused, you know, they have no place to move. A lot of them are like, I'm never moving from this house. You know, there's also that whole thing.
That's true.
People like to live in big houses, by, you know, with a small family. So
I mean,
if we're gonna make that happen, there has to be a desirable place for them to move, not just a place.
So we're not
That's what I
talking
found.
about,
Hundreds.
we're talking more than 200 and less than 300?
300,
Lots, I
Thousand?
bet if we would be lucky if we
Affordable?
found 50.
in the long term, Karen, I have no way to predict that.
No, I know you can't predict it, but that's what I'm trying to imagine. How is this gonna, unless it's multifamily?
Well, I think that's why we need to do an
first
analysis
step is-
of these small lots, to see really what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't know what we're talking about.
Right, and see what we want to do with them. Do we want to keep them undeveloped? Do we want to offer a subsidy for somebody to build on it? Do we want to buy them to give them to Habitat for an affordable home? I think we need to do an analysis of like a small lot analysis. to
The
see
bottom
what
line is, I
potential
think we
is.
want to use them one way or the other.
You know, over the years, I
Have
fielded
to.
a fair amount of phone calls from families who've inherited parcels from their families. A lot of them on Main Street, in fact, that were subdivided long ago in configurations that are unbuildable today. And there's interest, you know, upon like a deceased family member to sell that lot. And I often have to be the one to break the news to them that their lot is merged because it has been held in common subsequent to the increase of zoning requirements, and it's not worth anything. And I always hate giving that message.
Sure.
Because that's like, in many cases, it's families who have held that property for a long time with the hopes of giving it to a nephew or a son or a daughter or whomever, to either build on themselves or to sell as an asset, and they aren't able to do it. So,
There's some potential. It might not be hundreds of houses, but for that house, for that extended family, that would be super important.
And like a starter home would be, have you ever seen like a Habitat for Humanity house?
Oh, yes.
It's
Out there
like
on
that.
Great
It's-
Neck Road.
Right, it's a house, it's 2 bedrooms, it's nothing,
Well, they
Nothing
weren't,
too
they weren't,
fancy.
it's nothing
Nothing too
fancy, it's
high.
not on the wall, the location's not desirable per se.
I'm sure
it's
they're
just-
500,000.
Well, I mean, that's affordable nowadays, almost.
I'm sure they are.
Well, I'm not, you know,
Housing
Sounds like that, I'm affordable.
I'm looking, if I see one, that'd be great, but, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you.
I can't even recall which so just to bring it back to strategies.
Conduct an analysis of I think it should be small residential lots to explore, you know, potential for
Can starter homes be
affordable
townhouses?
or starter
Can
homes.
starter homes be townhouses?
I mean, starter homes is generally implying an ownership situation to build equity.
Well, can't you own a
You can, a
townhouse?
condo, yeah, as a condo.
Yeah.
Well, so how would we rewrite this?
I mean, so,
Conduct an analysis of small or unbuildable lots in town to explore the potential for an affordable lot bylaw or a starter home lot bylaw.
So does this then kind of merge with strategy 5, or no? Because strategy 5 is specific to basically allowing small affordable units on otherwise unbuildable lots under zoning. And when I say 5, I'm sorry, I'm referring to the,
Oh, no.
Yep.
What number?
Yep.
so
On page
strike
58.
8 and rely on 5?
you could, I mean, you could. I mean, it's kind of
Okay.
getting at 2 different things, but I think based on this conversation, I think 5 is really what it's getting at. But I guess
I'd
the
love to strike it,
8 was not really
Number
specific
8.
to capital A affordable housing.
which is
different.
also numbered 6. But it's right, the other thing is it doesn't talk about a starter home.
True.
Number 5, under affordable housing production, that doesn't talk about a starter home. Maybe this should be the same thing.
Well, it talks about affordable units, which it doesn't, I guess it doesn't specify, but small affordable units.
Affordable housing development, I'm assuming those go on the side.
Yeah, yes.
Right, yes.
How many, just off the top of your head, how many unbuildable lots do you think there are in this town?
I can tell you.
Look at the footnote.
You can
Yeah.
tell?
Well, I can tell you based on assessor's records only, this is not actually analyzed with
Yeah.
wetlands and whatnot, but there's 371 undevelopable residential lots. Those are not all actually. 371. Now, again, that's literally just based on assessor's records. That's not looking at wetlands or anything like that. That is
That represents
highly
a
unlikely
lot
that
of
those are actually
opportunity.
all
I can also
buildable.
definitively tell you, because I've had numerous debates with the assessor relative to this question. The assessor does not consider lot mergers. And so there are lands held privately in common with adjacent undersized lots that are still listed in the assessor's records as developable. They're going to continue assessing taxes on those properties as if they're developable until there's a negative determination by the building commissioner determining that it is indeed merged. So that number's likely larger.
Well, why don't we conduct an analysis of small and/or unbuildable residential lots to explore the potential of a starter home / affordable home program.
Yeah.
Is that going under zoning for housing choice, or is that going under the affordable?
let's
Zoning for
rewrite-
housing choices.
Okay.
We gotta keep things underneath that one to keep the state.
So is that then striking strategy 5 under,
No,
no?
No.
Okay, all right.
no, because that is like affordable housing.
Yeah, I
capital
think
A
that you,
affordable.
yeah, okay, all right.
Is there any way we say affordable housing and market housing?
Yeah, the
Can we
zoning for
set the
housing
price?
choices, the zoning for housing choices
I
are more
mean-
like market rate houses.
For starter home, that's.
Yes,
We
yes.
set a price,
Yep,
so when, like 300,000, say, instead of that 500,000, so it's really a starter home.
I don't think we can control the price,
Yeah.
Dennis.
without some sort of
But
subsidy
you
and
know what?
density restricted.
If we get the list of lots, right?
Yeah.
Like, put that thought in the parking lot, right? If we get a list of lots and see potential for a starter home program, that's when we can discuss how we're gonna go forward. For example, we'll let you build on this lot, but it has to be used for year-round housing. And it has to be a reasonably sized house so that it's priced reasonably.
Can we do it this,
Because it's by special, you'd have to do it by special permit to put all these
Yes,
extra
has to be
things on.
Right,
special
right.
permit.
can we do it this way? You give us a starter home at a reasonable price, and we'll give you an extra lot.
Well,
You know,
if you
like the
recall,
incentive. We'll give you an extra, you can put another house at market price, but starter homes, the price you're looking at, nobody can start them.
so as
With a
we,
family,
as we
really.
evaluate the implementation of each of these zoning strategies,
Right.
the first thing we also need to
Starter home
consider is the inclusionary zoning component. So if any of these zoning strategies are implemented, then it should be coupled with an inclusionary requirement, whereas some portion of whatever market rate units are produced, some portion of them has to be restricted and subsidized and included on the subsidized housing inventory.
So we have
would
to have
capture that.
market rate too in this?
Say it again,
We'd
Karen?
have to have market rate or deed
The
restricted?
zoning for housing choices is basically market rate. Okay, so what's in the plan on page 58, if I'm right, Alexis, the zoning for housing choices is not necessarily affordable housing.
Correct.
On page 57, where it says affordable housing development,
Yeah.
see how they start right away with chapter 40B? This is the affordable stuff that will go on the inventory.
Yeah. So are we gonna keep 8 with the rewrite and,
We're gonna rewrite it to some type of analysis of lots
okay.
to identify the potential for an affordable lots or a starter home lots bylaw.
Okay. Are we in agreement? Is the board all in
Yes.
agreement?
I'm
The
like,
minutes
please
are gonna
say
be
yes.
We'll be here till 11 o'clock tonight.
Nah, we're breezing through.
What happened to 9, encourage infill through redevelopment of underutilized commercial properties?
That's, there, I just, is it not on your copy?
It's not on this.
It's not on my,
Oh,
I
right.
made.
No, I mean, you think
I
we,
must have just missed it.
I think we like that, don't we?
Yeah, I think you were only commenting on the ones that there seemed to be a lot of concern about.
Oh, yeah, there was consternation with the ones particularly
The only
identified.
thing about this, does it have to be infill? Are we limiting it?
No, we can
Encourage the
encourage
redevelopment.
redevelopment, yeah.
Just strike that and just say encourage.
Redevelopment of
Yeah.
underutilized, yeah.
I just don't want to.
Okay, good.
Okay, you got it.
Keep.
Let's
And
read it.
number 10, consider reducing parking requirements.
I like it.
Yeah, leave that in there.
Tried and true strategy.
So what happens when, you don't have two, you have a family and they have two cars? You reduce it by whatever percentage, so somebody's gonna be scrambling for a parking
Well,
space.
in many cases, there are many communities across the country now that have eliminated parking requirements altogether. Because the construction of surface parking or the construction of structured parking is very expensive. The cost of that gets passed on the housing. So the removal, I mean, obviously you need parking and the developer wants to provide parking for his tenants and/or new owners, but the free market decides.
So it's a balance, because you don't want to force on-street parking, right?
Yeah.
So it's a balance, but maybe we don't need, for an apartment building, maybe we don't need 2 parking spots per unit.
Maybe it's one.
Maybe it's 1.5.
Especially if you have one-bedroom units in a development,
1 point,
And-
I've heard that.
And that property management company can say to an applicant tenant household, you can only have X amount of vehicles. That's in your lease.
All right.
So this is a tried and true strategy with
Okay.
data to support its efficacy.
It works?
It works.
Okay, we'll keep it.
Yeah.
Anyone
I've
opposed to
seen
this?
it, I've seen it happen. It's,
Are we all for that?
Yep.
Yes, unanimous.
especially if it's on a bus route. It really
And,
works.
and the same, on
And
that
somebody
vein,
might not have a car.
we have goals to improve the pedestrian accommodations in this town.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if we're redeveloping areas with pedestrian amenities and with connectivity to their jobs, presumably, the necessity for multiple vehicles in a household goes down. So it's coupled with many of our other goals throughout the comprehensive plan as well.
But do they come together when this
I'm thinking.
is built here? Oh, we don't have any sidewalks, so you better buy a car.
We'll evaluate that when the time comes. But
Well, you can buy
this
half a
is
car.
in consideration of
I
a
mean,
larger
there
vision.
are some developments that actually come with a car. They have
Car share.
communal cars.
Oh, that's something new.
Wow.
I've never
Yeah.
seen that before.
Yeah, and people are developers are like, well, do I start to build parking garages? Or do I, yeah, that's Lynn's car.
What is
Or
it?
do I,
Hybrid battery.
yeah, she's backing up. Or do we do zip cars, you know what I mean? Communal cars that you sign in and out of for the whole development. And they're electric and they're always plugged in and,
I hope they have smoking.
I have a doctor's appointment. I need the communal car. It's not available.
But I think the community has to support having, like utilizing sidewalks
You have
or
to sign
public
up for it.
transportation.
right,
The community has to support me being able to,
right.
like, let's say if I gotta get to work, my wife has to get to work.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't work for everybody,
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
tough.
It's
That's
probably
tough.
never worked for like the family with kids because,
If you're a
right.
homebody, it works.
But sometimes if you're retired,
55 or older
you're
community.
not working every day.
That's true.
and You're trying to
That
walk
probably works
more.
No, 55 is
So,
not too young. It should be 65.
Yeah, we are.
Okay, so we're keeping number 10. Number 11, are we gonna go through all these? I guess.
I'm fine until we get down to 14.
Okay, 11, does anybody have an issue with 11? I wanted to ask, what is the Barnstable County Home Consortium?
Barnstable County Home Consortium is funded by US HUD. It's money that has to be used to create affordable housing.
Okay,
And it's our county, our region, our county has it.
Okay.
And we have, each town sends a representative, and they get an entitlement every year from US HUD, and they select projects to fund. So the Leclerc Village got, I don't know, $300,000 from them.
Okay.
I'm not sure what they got from the home consortium,
Yeah.
but.
But they meet monthly, I think is the point,
Monthly.
and they confer on other housing-related topics. And as Mary pointed out, there's a representative from each of the 15 communities, so it's just a good existing place to confer on.
Okay. So that's good. 12?
12, is that the track permitting for new accessory? Okay, so I did catch an error there. It should be 64G, I believe, not 64C, just so you know. Little minor thing.
Say that again.
So under 12, where it talks about as authorized by MGL, Chapter 64C, it should be 64G. That's the statute relating to lodging. So short-term rentals fall under
Okay.
there.
Any questions about 12? No?
Nope.
Everybody good on that? 13? Any problem with 13? No. Good. 14?
14, I just think that we should, instead of putting the last bullet point as strike altogether, I think it should be replaced with a transfer of development right bylaw involving open space.
Or establish a separate transfer of development rights outside of OSID? Is that what you're saying?
No, there was gonna be a bullet point that was gonna say strike OSID completely. I don't think we should.
Yeah, so, yeah, that was not included on your version, right? Is that
Right.
the one?
Oh, I don't-
Instead of strike it, is replace it with a fully rewritten transfer of development right bylaw involving open space. Like, start from scratch,
Yeah.
but have it be a transfer of development right with open space. Because I love that idea of you give us open space, we multiply your development rights on that piece of open space into your development.
I think we just need to reword that last bullet,
Yeah.
because it does contemplate building a new bylaw with those criteria. So we should reword it so it's, I think, more
Yeah, don't
harmonious
put
with what Mary
strike,
suggested.
don't
Yeah,
put striking, you will not get my vote.
Okay,
Replace.
okay. Replace with.
So I think we can rewrite that to be more consistent, or at least, you know,
And it-
less immediately offensive,
Okay,
because.
say
I
how
think-
you're gonna
Preserve
rewrite
open
it.
space.
Yep, so replace with a transfer of development rights bylaw.
Retain the elements of the town wisest.
Yeah, which is, oh yeah, yeah. We'll just rework that one.
Wise
So-
to preserve.
So including that component of open space.
Town-wide. I
Yes.
think that's what,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Sounds good.
Because remember that
Okay.
lady came to one of the meetings a long
Yeah,
time
yeah,
ago, she
yeah.
said, I have 7 acres, how come I can't use it? Remember? Shelley Toby, I think that was her name, yeah.
I think, you know, just on that vein, you know, we could,
Oh, there's that last one on the next page, removing the accessory dwelling provision to reduce confusion with the
Oh.
accessory.
Yeah, that's just a
Yeah.
nitpicky thing.
yeah,
Just bothers me.
Okay,
I have a comment on number 20 and 21.
let's just go down. 15, anything? Okay with 15?
Yep.
All right, 16? Yes.
Yep, fine,
17?
yep, fine.
I guess so. 17 is fine.
Yep.
Yep. Lived out.
Number 18, 3 to 5 year strategic plan.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Can I just say before you move to capacity, that based on the, conversations that transpired, Evan and I had discussed whether adding a strategy simply about, again, beginning those conversations with the Sewer Commission, Board of Health, Natural Resources Department, et cetera, about, whether it makes sense to include a prioritization of affordable housing projects with variances, or basically just beginning to establish regular conversations with regard to the CWMP.
Do you think you should put that under affordable housing production though?
So, where do I have it right now? Under planning and collaboration, just, I think that kind of even transcends the HPP perhaps, but in order to continue conversations about housing, even though to Mary's point from earlier, this is just a 5-year plan. Any sort of conversation about housing and water quality needs to merge now.
It does.
So it's just, we had just some sort of strategy that, you know, you'll get to review with the draft, but something about engaging in conversations with these other entities to discuss.
Prioritize affordable
Yeah, we
housing
can-
development with respect to,
Flow neutral bylaw and CWMP.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good.
So as a new number
The
19.
Yeah,
CPA
that's new
funds,
number
19, beyond the 10% required. It sounds like a good thing.
Drives
from-
me crazy.
From the issue.
Because an application has to be submitted.
It's true.
Legally.
So Mary, I think in the responsible parties, that is on the Affordable Housing Trust. They're the party responsible for, I guess that's an Affordable Housing Trust policy, not a CPC policy. The Affordable Housing Trust has to apply for those funds.
Right. So do we like that? Seems like we do, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, 20.
I don't know how number 20 would work.
Okay, so community preservation money can be used in other towns. So I'm fine with this as long, provided that the host town officially votes to approve the incoming funds.
Even if the host town isn't Mashpee, is that your,
Yeah.
okay.
So, for example, there are towns that the state are looking at. They take their community preservation money, and every year, they quote-unquote spend their 10% by giving it to the Affordable Housing Trust. And the money is just building up in the trust. These are communities that do not want affordable housing in their town, so they just bank the money in the Affordable Housing Trust, and they never spend it. Okay? What's to stop them from spending it in another town? Nothing. Nothing. The law allows them to spend, they could build affordable housing in the neighboring town, and then you have all these wars. So I think we need to put something in there. Yes, fine, pool CPA money. We did it here. We gave money to the forward development, is it in Dennis? Right? Mashpee transferred CPA money to another town for the provision of disabled adults, housing of disabled adults that were low, moderate income. But I think we need to set this standard that the town where the project is located in has to approve that project.
I agree with that.
I'm not getting this at all.
So, all right, I'll give you another example. Lot of older motels on Route 28 in Dennis.
Yarmouth, Dennis.
Dennis, Yarmouth. So what if one of these rich towns with, now they have like $3 million in their trust, say, oh, we're gonna buy one of those hotels and convert it to affordable housing, just to get it off their books. The community where that motel is located, do they approve of this or not? Some people don't want their motels converted to affordable housing. They want them to be maintained as motels. You know what I mean? Because they don't want to lose
Why
their
aren't we
commercial
using
base.
that money? Why would we not be using that money that's in the Affordable Housing
I'm just saying
Trust?
that if we start to pool CPA funds regionally, we should make sure that the host community that's hosting the project is actually on board with it.
I think that's an easy addition, provided the host town
Well,
votes
you
to receive
Understand
funds.
that? I don't.
And I also think if you're gonna, I think the town that's gonna contribute should vote on it too, right?
Oh, yeah, they have to vote on
Oh,
it.
yeah, vote.
But the town, technically, the town receiving the money does not have to participate or vote to accept it.
So it should be
You
both-
can
both sides.
independently buy a lot of land for habitat in Barnstable, and Barnstable can do nothing to stop you.
Right.
Now, we all love habitat, but what if it's somebody we don't like? Do you know what I mean? What if it's like the kind of housing that Dennis was referring to before? A group home for people that are struggling. Well, maybe that neighboring town doesn't want that cited in there, right?
Well, yeah.
So,
Who would be doing the purchasing in that instance?
I don't
Uh,
know.
whoever-
It's
so
usually
some
a-
applicant for CPA funds.
Usually it's like a nonprofit,
Yeah.
Chodo or
Okay.
community, like a
Okay.
nonprofit, non-government agency. But you can see how that could get nasty real quick.
Yeah, I think that is easy wording to add, if there's no objection.
Yeah.
And then 21, remain up to date on federal, state, and regional funding opportunities.
Yeah.
Oh,
21.
What's, sorry, what's EOHLC?
Who wants to do it?
Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities.
The new,
It used to be DHCD, Department of Housing and Community Development. They've
Yeah.
become an executive office now. Or at least, again,
It's the state's housing department.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'll
So
try calling
we're
them.
for that, 21? Yes?
Yeah, 21.
22? Household earning over 100%. What is that amount at 100% right
oh
now?
gosh.
96,000 maybe?
What is
You have
it?
to give me a minute.
I think the area median income floats around $96,000
Yeah, so,
per
yeah.
year. I don't know for what household size. I
Right,
can't
it would
recall.
vary by household size.
Yeah,
It's enough to get you a starter home.
say a married couple or a couple and 2 kids.
So the main point with that is that right now, there really aren't subsidy sources to support that, other than there's, a workforce housing program that offers a certain amount per unit at the state level. But otherwise, in order to fund projects, say if you wanted to fund an ownership opportunity at 150% AMI or something like that, there's no funding sources for that. So at the local level, you would have to, however, there's a clear need for housing at income levels other than that 80%. So this would not be subsidized housing inventory eligible units, it would just be meeting a community need. But you'd have to
Subsidized.
establish a funding mechanism for it.
Well, could you give me I don't want to belabor this, but give me a picture of what would constitute creating funding for somebody over 100%
Sure.
AMI?
So there are some communities on Cape Cod that have these home rule petitions that are currently sitting, and it'll be really interesting to see what happens. So for example, I know Chatham has a home rule petition to establish another sort of housing trust that's not an affordable housing trust, it's community housing trust or something. And that's not authorized under Massachusetts law, so they have to file a home rule petition. And under that, I think they're looking to be able to fund projects up to 200% of the area median income. So they need to have, again, that approved at the state level. I'm not sure what will happen with that, but I think also with the governor's proposed housing bond bill, where I think there are provisions for seasonal communities to potentially be able to have more flexibility, that there may be, there may be opportunities for seasonal communities such as Cape Cod to go beyond what other communities can do in terms of establishing funding streams for different income levels. So it's just putting kind of the opportunity on the table to say, you know what, there are housing needs beyond what current subsidy sources can provide. Do we as a town want to establish such a fund to be able to provide for those kind of, moderate income, if you will, households who could not possibly afford to purchase a home? I think that would probably be more appropriate for ownership opportunities.
Ownership.
Where, as we were talking about with, the median income cannot come close to touching the median purchase price
Right.
in Mashpee. So it would be about, whatever income level might be reasonable, again, for discussion. Having some sort of channel for providing subsidy to create those opportunities. I don't know of other, I'm trying to think offhand. I feel like there's another community that also has a home rule petition. Like I know Nantucket, I think, is also trying to have the ability to fund over what the state currently allows.
And then they can fund it, they can fund this special realty trust with like a tax on, properties that sell for more than $2 million or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Like they can start a bank.
Yeah.
They can-
Yeah, we establish some sort of channel to capitalize that program.
All right, so we'll see if that happens.
I like it. Sounds good.
22, are we for that? Are you for that, Mr. Richardson? Are you for that, 22?
I
Yeah.
haven't looked at 22s lately, I didn't bring I'm listening to you guys.
Oh, there's 22.
22, I'm
Evalu-
good with.
Oh, here.
Evaluate and consider strategies.
Evaluate and consider strategies for establishing funding streams to support housing opportunities for households earning over 100% AMI, possibly through home rule petition. What you didn't give me is, so that I understand it, is, can you give me an example? What is, let's say, can you get the number of, just say, over 100? It could be 110 or whatever, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. But just over, a little bit over 100, a family of, what's the
I
average
sure
family?
can.
2 children or 1
Yeah.
They would make like $135,000 a year.
Right.
Oh, with 2 kids, okay, 135, okay, now, how does it go?
What do you mean?
Okay,
Sorry.
135 can't buy
They still
any-
can't afford a
anything
house.
here.
They could, yeah, to afford a house,
So
I
you
mean,
could
at
buy
the $750,000, I mean, you would need an income of, I mean,
Oh,
over.
don't say 750, we can find a house somewhere around here for 385.
So the
I think
bank,
she's
the
asking-
moderate income housing bank, right, not the affordable housing bank.
Yeah.
The
So, like-
moderate,
Yeah.
could
100%.
meet that affordability gap for that moderate income household to buy that house that's still out of their range. They could give them the $150,000
Yeah. And
to buy it down.
And then it's restricted, you know, so they can't just sell it and take the equity, you know, there's a deed restriction.
Restricted in what way?
There's a
In
deed
the
rider
length of
on
time
it,
they
so
have-
when they resell it, right? They either, it's structured in one of two ways. They either give the $150,000 back to the bank, or they have to sell it at a comparable reduced rate to the next qualifying household that's also moderate income.
So if the houses continue to appreciate, they may be, for a period of years, they may be able to return that money to the town.
Yeah, you can structure it in either way. Most towns want to keep the deed rider on it in perpetuity.
So are we for this?
well, what's a,
Yes?
well, I think we gotta talk about, what's a housing opportunity for a moderate income household? Because when I think of a moderate income household, I think of, you can afford like 100, if you combine make 150,000, 160,000 combined, you could afford a $600,000 house. But I think the problem is affording, actually getting like that down payment. That's the problem, I think.
Did you say
Because, like-
150,000 a year?
160,000
You could use it
combined.
Because that's much higher than what is
Oh.
currently, yeah, that's higher than the median income. So someone earning that wouldn't be able, even though in theory they could afford, there's no
Payments.
subsidy programs available to close that gap between what's on the market and what's actually available.
Okay, well, so what's 100% AMI?
For a household of four,
Four.
$115,000.
115,000. So you could afford what? You can afford like $500,000 home, $400,000 home.
It's-
You could
yeah.
afford the monthly payment, but like the down payment and the closing costs, because you're making
You could
enough.
set
to-
up a program that doesn't just buy it down, right? But could give that,
I'm just thinking of like
the
down payment
Down payment
assistance.
the down
yeah.
payment and the closing costs.
And then there's like you could put like a
And-
time
and they
limit
can
on it, and
either-
you can sell it for.
You know, pay it back, you know what I mean? Or it just sits there as a silent mortgage until they resell it, or you get a deed rider on
Yeah, or
it.
just rolls into your mortgage or some way, but, yeah, I just wanna know. I
It's
just wanna
funny, because every
find-
address and every household is different. It's almost like you have to have as many tools in the toolbox as possible
Right.
to fit all these different scenarios.
When they figure that 100%, do they add in insurance, taxes, besides just the mortgage? Because
The
Yeah.
housing,
That could-
That's a good question. Yeah, so like when we calculate housing affordability, it's
the word
typically,
for
for
sex.
ownership, it's factoring in mortgage, insurance,
right.
property
Property tax.
taxes. So when we calculate that affordability gap, we're factoring in your property tax rate. We're also factoring in current mortgage interest rates, which is another big reason why it's so unaffordable right now. on top of-
PITI, pity,
right.
Yes.
And when we do the rent,
it is a pity.
right, we include the rent payment and the utilities.
Right.
Okay.
See, when they do the housing costs for home ownership, they don't
They don't
throw
include
in.
the utilities.
They don't throw in the utilities. You're on your own.
I think, just relative to this strategy, I've heard countless times the desire to include the ability to restrict and create housing at income levels that exceed 80% of the area family median income. And, so much of the programs for affordable housing production, like the tax credit programs, for example, incentivize for developers the production of units that are restricted at very low income levels, so like less than 40% of area median income. So I hear frequently the criticism that, or at least the concern that many of the affordable units produced, which as intended are providing housing for the most significantly in need or the most significantly cost burdened households. But there's a growing gap, affordability gap for those income levels in excess of the 80% AMI. So many people say, I can't afford to enter the market or stay in the market, but I do not qualify for affordable housing. And that's something we need to reconcile. So I would advise retaining this strategy.
Okay. All right, we agree on 22?
Yep.
Yep.
Number 23 is a great idea.
Yep.
But it doesn't seem like this happens around here.
Well, that's why in the footnotes it says, could be funded with CPA money.
Yeah.
I think if you don't have it, if you don't ask, you don't get it.
Right, you could have an affordable housing community preservation planner. And that would be 100% funded.
There does not appear to be an appetite to fund this
Fine.
under the general operating budget.
Yeah,
Gosh.
that
But
could be
if-
100%.
If there's any opportunity, it can be funded with CPA.
So we leave it in.
I would say we leave it in.
Yeah,
I would.
Yeah.
And I understand there's an ad for a part-time grant writer now.
Yes.
So that's wonderful.
Grant coordinator.
Is that a writer?
It's unclear. I think so. I
Okay.
think it includes all components of
Finding it and writing it.
submission, and monitoring as
Yeah.
required. Working.
And 20, oh, no, we're on 24.
that looks
Oh,
good.
that's a good thing. Citizen planner training.
Got Dale signed
Everyone
up.
for number 24?
I'm signed up.
I'm fine with 24.
A little more work. 25.
Sure.
Well, we're chewing that. Here,
Yep.
share this with me. Yes, 25, yes.
Yep.
Yep.
26, continue.
Number 26,
I'm
yes.
fine, Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, for year-round occupancy. Well, there won't be that many forgivable loans.
Yep, I'm for it, though.
Okay.
Let's go for it, yeah.
27. $28,
Yeah, I'm good with
is that a
28.
yes? Everyone free that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I wonder who said this on 29.
Probably Mary Wagon, I don't know. Maybe J. Marie Stevenson, I don't know. Mashpee Inclusion and Diversity Committee,
Yeah.
go.
That doesn't cost any money, it just costs time.
Really,
Okay,
really
well, I think we did okay.
Yeah.
I knew we weren't that far off.
I've got,
Oh, wow, I didn't.
I knew it.
I've
I
got-
didn't feel it after our last meeting, but I.
well, we didn't have enough time. I do have a couple comments on page 28.
28.
28.
Page 28?
Over your shoulder. Mike.
Page 28 has a list of condo complexes, but it's missing Sea Oaks, Sandalwood, Quashnet Valley. Is it Pheasant Run, Dare Crossing, Southport, Oak Hollow, et cetera?
Yep, so I have that in your written comments. I'll make sure in the
Yeah.
updated draft that we include that.
Yeah. And then also, you, on 28, you list apartments. the ones that you have listed are affordable, and I think you should note that those are all affordable. Maybe you did. But also, there's a smattering of apartments in Mashpee Commons that are market rate.
Okay, yep.
So we should
Yep.
put that in there. From the original, not the chapter 40B. There's some apartments over like by Pottery Barn.
Depot Street.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it does show that we do have some diversity in housing, and why that's important is so that people can go and drive to these places and see what it feels like. What does 10 units per acre feel like? What does 8 units per acre feel like? Also, on page 38, barriers to affordable housing. I think you should put it right out there, lack of developable land.
So may I ask, and I, no objection to that, but just in terms of, I'm sorry, what page did you say that was?
In 38, you start to list the barriers,
Oh, yes,
and
okay.
I think we need to clearly state, we're not like a town, a desert
Oh,
town.
I see, in the.
Then you have more land and you just need water. I mean, we have very limited
Yeah,
developable land. I think 14% region-wide, right, is left for development or preservation as open space.
so you're saying, because we do talk about open space in the section, but that introduction, it should clearly state that.
I think it should be you know how you have topography,
Yeah,
soils, water resources? I think that needs to be a bold,
so
Yeah,
we have a protected open space.
no, one of the barriers to development is we don't have land
Okay.
left to
Gotcha.
develop.
All right, so in addition to the protected open space, what is not protected is largely built out, is what you're
It's not protected, it's not there.
It's not there.
saying. Yeah, right, okay.
So, we lack vacant, undeveloped land for development. We know, because the Cape Cod Commission did a study on this, it's about 14% region-wide, the
Gotcha.
land is not developed. So that could be developed or put aside as open space. So, that's to me, that's the main reason why we don't have enough housing, is we don't have any more
Yeah.
land to build these subdivisions on.
Okay.
Also, the environmental constraints, you kind of touch upon it, but I think the fact that we don't have clean water right now in town, you heard it tonight, it's a huge barrier to development. It's not that we don't have enough infrastructure, it's that our water bodies are polluted.
right.
And we're gonna be asking people for money
Big
to
money.
build infrastructure. You know, hindsight's 20/20, but we should have done this a long time ago. We should have charged the developers to build it, right?
Let
But-
me read this last thing and tell me if you think it makes any sense, because I really kind of struggled with this. We have approximately 15,000 year-round residents in this town. I think it's more, let's say 15.
It is 15.
With the HPP proposed, what are we looking to increase the year-round population? To what level? I mean, I don't know how many more thousands of people we'd build for.
So I mean, obviously, these zoning strategies would come with increased units and thus increased population. Until you go through the implementation and design of these
Okay,
strategies,
but-
you won't be able to determine
Okay, but
what
let me
that
say this,
population would be.
let me just say this.
Either way, it's gonna
And
be
any
small.
other number you determine, it would be arbitrary until you go through. the
Okay, we
exercise.
don't know. All right, so let's say we increase the population by.
Probably like to 100,000 people.
Well, all right, so how
Oh,
many,
you're full of-
how many affordable units do we need? We need 370.
Okay, all right.
Right? So that's, if you're, say, two-person households average, right? That's an increase of 740 people.
Okay.
So you can
That's
see.
not that much.
Yeah, but when you add it to 15,000, you
Okay.
are starting to talk about a lot.
Okay, but here's
So-
where I'm going with this. Okay, we don't know how many more people we're adding. Our seasonal population at this point swells to 38,000 people. So you subtract 15,000 from that for the full term, full year. You got 23,000 people floating around here in the season, extra, okay? So if we finish the 450 houses on phase 1 of the sewer, and we finish the 1,288 houses on phase 2, which would come to 2,738 houses sewered, but that's not going to happen according to information I have, the last two, to 2029 or 2030. So the question is, how many, would we build more dwelling units which would cancel out the benefit of 2,738 homes sewered?
Needs to be evaluated.
So in, our, again, kind of ongoing conversations with staff familiar with this issue, my understanding is that if any sort of revised build-out assumptions, in theory, could potentially require recalculation of TMDLs and things like that. But that is
Right.
not, that is a bit beyond the scope of this to be able to nail that down precisely, which is why we're kind of just advocating these conversations need to commence
Yeah.
with land use decisions and water protection.
Yeah.
All go together.
But will we know, I mean, will we be able to say, okay, we built too many, now we can't go any further? We don't want to kill, the benefit of what we may, and we won't even know what the benefit is according to what, they tell us of these 1,288 homes for maybe a couple of years.
I asked that question to get recognition. How much can the whole Cape Cod?
Yeah, what's the
How many more
capacity?
people can we allow to be living here before it tips over?
See how the environmental condition is a barrier?
Oh, absolutely.
And I think it needs to be put in bold.
Yeah,
Not just wastewater, not just infrastructure, but environmental conditions, are pretty bad. And we, as a community, have made the decision that we're not gonna build out like coastal cities. We've made that decision. It's region-wide. And some of this HPP stuff is to kind of let the state know that we know that we need affordable housing, but we need to put environmental conditions on there so when they read it, they get it. Because I go to these meetings that are statewide,
yeah.
and people don't understand why the Cape is so far behind on this. And I keep telling them, and I get a lot of pushback. It's our environment. Our environment is fragile down here, and we're preserving it.
Yeah.
So I will say, so for the HPP, one of the requirements is to identify the barriers, but then you have to identify plans to mitigate the barriers. So we identify environment, water quality, et cetera. It has to identify at least some, some way of mitigating it, which I think at this phase, what is prudent to say is to really engage in conversations about prioritizing affordable housing when, considering granting variances within the flow neutral bylaw or,
We have our nitrogen management plan to deal with the previous housing.
Right.
You know what I mean? And we might want to call that out specifically in the plan, that we're playing catch-up. We're catching up on, all of this pollution has been caused by residential development. You know what I mean? And we've all flushed, and we're all part of it. But we're catching up. And I think that needs to be written so that when the person up at the state reads it, they understand that we're not hillbillies. It's not like we don't understand this. You know what I mean? We're dealing with it. But some of their expectations are a little aggressive.
Yeah, we have to be honest.
Really?
Basically, I mean, this is not a solution that's gonna come
Easy. I mean,
easy and may not come at all.
Even if every single
Right.
house we built from this point on was affordable, right? It's 370 units. Think about where 370 units are gonna go.
No,
You know?
definitely
Yeah,
not
not-
mine.
And that's
like
not likely
the,
to happen any 10%.
Right.
I have a question, just on page
10%,
15.
right? 370?
That's just our
Yeah,
10%.
and the need is far more substantial.
And never mind the market rate.
Yeah, I feel like the analysis that Alan Isbitz did relative to, the existing cost burden households in relation to the median home sale price is in excess of 1,000 units of housing.
Yes. I was gonna guess
So that's the real need.
is 1,000
Is
new
so-
units.
the 10% is somewhat arbitrary, really.
So that's why, as we consider the language we utilize relative to our environmental limitations and the magnitude of that problem in relation to the magnitude of the housing problem, I don't really necessarily think this is my professional opinion, I don't want to minimize one over the other. It's, the magnitude of each issue is severe, it's huge. And, you know, hindsight is 20/20. You don't want to get, I would hate to think 20 years down the road, having ignored this issue for too long to play that catch up and then have a completely unsustainable economy to enjoy the work that was done.
Right.
I have one more comment. Page 57, you have something about following the December meeting, we will provide additional narratives for each strategy.
Yeah, so what that means is typically what we do in the draft that will go for the public, we just give a little more detail, like for things that are currently in the footnotes. For example, that footnote about the number of undevelopable lots, or, you know, whatever's currently in the footnote.
57, you see where it's highlighted?
Yeah, this,
Yeah.
No, up top.
oh, here.
See how it says more information is coming?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just wondering if we're gonna get that before we have to take our formal vote.
I have something to add to that.
Go ahead.
We had to submit a draft plan to Cape Cod Commission I submitted it on Saturday. It includes much of that information. I wanted, it exists in the form that you initially saw it. So that draft will be provided to you in its totality in a link tomorrow morning or sometime
Well-
thereafter, after we make some changes.
Yeah, so here's the thing. So, Mary, what I'll say is before you have to vote, yes, because this
Okay.
is going up for public comment anyway.
Right.
Okay,
I don't think that any of the narrative, so what is in the draft that Evan submitted that was not, this was just a draft needs assessment and draft strategies. There's now an introduction to the plan that outlines the public engagement process and what a housing production plan is and all of that. So that's a new part of the plan that you will see before voting. And then in terms of the additional narrative for the strategies, that is just for ones that require a little more explanation, kind of based on the things that we talked about tonight, for example. It's just providing a little more narrative, or like, look at what Provincetown does, or look at what this town, you know, it's just giving some more context for the strategies. And it's a lot of work, to be honest, so we usually try to wait until we know what the strategies are. That's, I think.
How many pages is that?
Well, so the introduction, I think, was maybe 8 to 10 pages on top of what you received. And then,
Longer now.
yeah. I mean, I don't know, you're probably looking at maybe 5 to 10 additional pages with expansion of some of that
Okay,
detail,
that's
like who'd be
doable.
implementing it, or, yeah, it's not a heavy load. If you've digested these many pages, then I think, you know.
and it was really helpful to have the surveys and all the workshop write-ups. I know
Yes.
that was a lot of work to get to us, but
I have a question.
Those are
that really
Yeah,
helped.
those are in the appendix of the plan as well.
That really
so.
helped.
I have a
That's a
question.
Okay, Dennis.
On page 15, it says sample household. How come they don't say married couple? There's no married couple. It's a single retail worker, police officer, stay-at-home parent, a single parent, a construction worker.
There's just no respect for traditional values these days.
No,
You know,
No.
I'll have
I
to
mean,
look.
the
I think
divorce
we tried to
rate
just
is
have a
so
variety of
You
households.
can't find a married couple that'll agree on anything.
There's no married couple in
Come to
there?
my house. You been to my house?
couple living
Yeah.
on Social Security.
Yeah,
There I am.
that's me.
You know why? Because, I'll tell you why. A single parent household has a lower income than a married couple. Of course. Household. So they're trying to show the need, and this is, like, they're trying to say, these are the example couples that are families, households, that are gonna need housing.
Oh, so you know what? I guess I didn't use the word married couple, but the construction worker, home health aide, and 3 children. I mean, I took that as
All
a
right.
couple and their
I
children.
kinda took that like that, but I like to see a married couple, you know?
Let's do it. Put married in there.
Two married
Are-
masters.
Okay, are we
Two
going
married
to
households.
discuss raise and replace again?
What's that?
Are we going to
No, let's-
continue with raise and
I'm
replace
not
or
brain
move
dead.
on?
I have such a headache,
I'm
Karen.
brain dead now.
Okay, are we doing our economic and housing production Well,
I could do
wait.
the economic development one because you didn't change much and it's excellent.
Yeah, okay, well, let me do something else that's, I think, a little fun here. Where is it now?
Are we
Wait.
through the HPP?
Yes, I think
Yeah,
we
so
are.
what do we do?
We're
Are we
done.
meeting Monday with
We're
the,
meeting with the select board on
What time, 6:30?
Monday. Now,
no, I love the Board of Selectmen.
But now
That's
you
not
can
what I
tell
meant.
them all the
the
wonderful
wonderful
progress we
progress
made
that
in this
we've made
discussion.
tonight.
Yeah.
And,
So I'm glad you asked that, because I want to get an understanding. So you said tomorrow morning,
won't be tomorrow.
okay. Because I guess I just want to have a sense of the timeline of, so when, would it be okay then to make a draft available for whatever that comment period is after the select board also says, okay, right? Like that really should happen next week.
Yeah.
This is my water quality. It'll take.
All right, so we're meeting Monday, the 8th at 6 PM.
That is currently
Six
planned and scheduled,
6
yes.
PM, Monday, yes.
All
And
right.
we'll go over all this again.
It may be 6:30. They canceled everything else on their agenda only to handle
I
this.
thought I
think
heard
We can look, we can
6:35.
look at it, get the agenda and see what
All
time
right, so
they
it's
set.
6 or 6:30?
Yes.
Okay, okay, this I found on the, in the parish hall at
Guess
my
we're not doing
church.
that.
I liked it, so I took a snapshot. and I
Oh,
said-
Give me-
To
lovely.
confirm, we are done with the
Karen, you
housing
got any
production
more?
plan.
Pardon me? We're done with the, yes.
Can
We are-
we excuse Alexis?
Oh, yes.
No, we love you, you have to stay.
I want to look
Two
at
more.
your wonderful infographic.
Yeah, leave it.
I'm a little, I'll share with me. I'm a little short on that.
Wow. Cigarettes, 10
This
years.
is really quite unbelievable. I cut off who produced it, but, anyway, it's hanging up, and obviously somebody is very interested in the environment, and I am too. So, I mean, it's kind of shocking. Diapers, 450 years,
I know,
oh my God.
I know.
Hey, you can't convince me to use washables, man. I'm sorry.
I used washables for mine.
Oh,
Yeah, I
did
think
my
it was
first.
like, when I went back to work, I changed. I couldn't,
Anyway,
could
just
not do
so,
it.
this is, we don't want this.
that's-
Cole, do you want to see this?
Oh, he would love this.
That's
This
very,
is
uh,
right up his alley.
Geez,
Does somebody
400
want to give
years?
your copy?
Yes,
Because
there
yeah.
you go. I already
Yeah.
memorized it.
Because he's an environmentalist, I can tell.
A beer bottle
Okay, so
for
that's that.
1,000.
And then, we don't have any board member committee reports?
No.
No.
So
Cape Cod Commission,
so we are not touching
economic or housing?
LCP, we're not doing
or
LCP.
raise and
Well, we
replace.
can if you want to. It's up to you. I can do my economic if you want, or we can defer it again. See, I knew we had too much to do today. I knew this was gonna be a long thing.
I mean, I just wonder if we
I'd
ought
rather
to
go
reconsider how we provide these comments for the LCP, because I need to receive that
You need to,
feedback.
all right, well, look, I
And
just
so
handed.
I'm tired too, don't get me wrong, I'd love to book it, but I just really want to consider
I
how
handed
that gets done.
this all out,
Well,
basically.
We have busy meetings upcoming, so I don't want to continue to defer this for
No, I agree. It's,
LCP or the HPP?
the LCP. HPP we made
We're
great
done.
progress on. And so, I don't know,
All right, so what's our next meeting?
17th.
well, but we've got Willow Bend
Yeah, Willow Bend
coming
Council
up.
coming.
But we start
All right.
early, you know.
Do you want me to make short work of economic? I mean, this is, there's some good things in here,
Or, I mean,
or what?
would you consider like a early
Early-
evening meeting ad hoc to just
Yeah.
go through those two items?
Yeah, you mean early for the next meeting?
It's like a 5 PM meeting or 6, like,
Five.
you know.
I can make it by 5:30.
5:30.
And I could do, any time really.
Can you
I just
make it
think it's important
5:30?
we don't continue to defer this. My wife's gonna be
17th?
mad that I'm suggesting
Oh,
an
yeah,
additional
no,
meeting.
I can't make it Monday, I'm gonna
We
be.
have
All
to
right,
get through
okay,
it,
let's
and I
take
am
a vote
tired.
on it. How many
Okay.
people want to do it tonight?
Oh, okay, but on the 17th, you
Yeah, no,
can
I'm
make it
good.
at 5:30? Can you make it at 5:30 on the
I
17th?
can make it at noontime.
8 AM with a
I'm all in
donut.
for an 8:30 morning meeting.
That's good for me, too.
I don't know.
Yeah, whatever, I mean,
How about you? Can you get here by 8:30?
On which day?
Well, let Evan
I-
pick a date.
We'll
I'd have
email
to
you
look.
tomorrow
I might
and
have-
pull you.
I might have an appointment.
But it would be good to get through that work and focus on it and not feel
All right,
distracted
why
by
don't we
some
say
of our other priorities.
5:30 on the 17th? Because we have Willow Bend.
I can be here
At
at
7.
5:30.
And
That's fine.
we can
5:30?
actually just keep going, you know?
I'm fine
So
with
we're
that.
gonna do economic development, housing. Is anybody prepared to go?
I have to do the municipal buildings.
So
Okay.
Would you just be prepared in case we
I
whip
am.
through the other two?
I am.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll
Let's get through
do
as much as we're able. And if we have to do that
5:30.
again, it would be great.
January 17 meeting. Do housing production,
Can you be here? Okay.
economic
That's a
development, and
Municipal
municipal buildings, et cetera. Okay, we can probably get through those, because
I think
if it's
so.
5:30, then it's 7 o'clock.
And we're housing experts.
And you are. And what?
That's great.
What time is the Willow Bend, you know, 7:10?
7:10, I believe, yeah.
7:10 Willow Bend, so, yes, so we have to conclude this in an hour and a half.
Fine.
I
Yeah,
think we can. Okay, all in agreement?
Yep.
yes.
Okay. All right, so therefore,
I do
It
have an
seems-
update, one update.
oh, I'm Cape Cod?
Cape
Sorry.
Cod Commission has issued a draft of their regional housing strategy. And they're looking for comments by January 19th.
And I can forward you the copy I was provided on Saturday.
And I'm going to ask them
Of course.
to have a formal public comment period of no less than 30 days. But at this point, they gave me the link to the regional housing strategy, and they said I can give it to anybody for comment. So we'll get it to you for comment.
All right.
I think it's important that we look at it just because of what we did with the HPP. You'll
On the
see why.
Mashpee, we have to be consistent with,
We should be consistent.
yeah,
Karen?
yes.
But just before we go through the full board committee reports, I did want to offer one update under my town planner report.
Okay.
Relative to the LCP chapters.
Sure.
So I am starting to get completed chapters in. I provided them to you tonight.
Yes.
In your packet.
Yes.
You've seen, this is mostly a fully formatted and expanded existing conditions chapter, inclusive of the policies and objectives that you've contemplated. So I've been receiving them, I've gone through them, and you'll see some comments in there, mostly pertaining to information that has changed since we first gone through the chapters. But I wanted to provide them to you so you can begin to consume them. Please do so. So when we get through the implementation table, presumably we'd be at a point to begin knitting this document together. And so I just like your eyes on those draft chapters if there's any glaring issues or
So
things you
please,
feel that need
everybody
changing.
hold them so we don't have to recopy them.
Yep.
Just keep them in a safe packet.
And look at this, the maps and
We
the
hear
right
that?
orientation. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
There's actually one issue, not an issue, but a formatting question I wanted to pose to the board relative to the transportation chapter you've been provided.
Yeah,
And it's because of the maps, there's some kind of odd spacing in there. And the way to fix the spacing kind of ends up resulting in the maps not being on the same page as the information it's contemplating.
Yeah.
So if you are okay with the spacing issue as it exists, please let me know. Otherwise, if you have a comfort level with kind of the maps being more disjointed from the information it's contemplating, but formatted in a manner that looks more pleasing, let me know. I didn't want to make that decision and then go through it and have you have an issue with it. So please pay attention to the spacing in the transportation chapter.
okay. Easy. Okay, so,
Do you want me
nothing
to
on
pass
charter
this out
review,
now?
Yeah, why not?
anything on community preservation,
No.
nothing, design review, no, plan review,
Has not met.
EOC,
Nope.
Historic District Commission, no. Okay, I take a motion to adjourn.
So be.
I'm passing out the Cape Cod multifamily housing design guidelines from the Cape Cod
I think
Commission.
we've done a nice job on this.
So this is, what do you call it? When we're talking about form-based code light, this is form-based code light.
Do you have another?
There should be several copies.
Oh,
This really is laid out and designed very consistently with how a form-based code would look, but it's not a regulatory mechanism, it's guidance. But
It's
I like that
someplace-
they've done it this way.
It's someplace to start. And that's, this is from the Cape Cod Commission, this is part of their regional housing strategy is, anyways, I wanted you to have a hard copy before we meet again.
Oh, I'm excited for that.
Nice full.
And then I will second that motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.